Welcome to this explainer. Chances are you're literally holding the topic of today's deep dive right in your hand. The mobile phone is unarguably one of the most widely used pieces of consumer technology in all of human history. So today, we're going to look beyond the glass screen to understand exactly how this incredible device works, how it got here, and how it fundamentally reshaped our entire world. Just think about this number for a second. 9.1 billion. Between 1993 and 2024, worldwide mobile phone subscriptions skyrocketed to over 9.1 billion. That means there are literally more active connections right now than there are human beings on Earth. In almost half the countries in the world, over 90% of the population owns at least one. We went from a world of stationary, clunky landlines to a truly invisible, ubiquitous ecosystem in just a few decades. Okay, here's our roadmap for today. First, the dawn of mobile. Second, how cellular networks actually work. Third, the anatomy of a phone. Fourth, the software revolution. And finally, the global impact and complex realities of this tech.
All right, part one, the dawn of mobile, where we go from giant car bricks to pocket computers.
It is absolutely wild how fast this technology moved. I mean, early predecessors were basically giant analog radio systems stuck on ships and trains, and even early car phones required massive power draws. But by 1973, we get the very first handheld cellular demonstration. Now get this, that early prototype weighed nearly 2 kilograms. That's almost 4.5 pounds. It took another decade until 1983 for the Motorola Dynatac 8000X to become the first commercially available handheld phone. Then, boom, a huge leap happens in 1991 when the first 2G digital cellular network launches in Finland, moving us away from analog entirely.
And this quote right here, it perfectly captures the fierce, almost petty human rivalry driving all of this innovation. When Motorola's Martin Cooper made that very first public handheld call back in 1973 on the streets of New York, he didn't call a family member. No, he called Joel S. Engel, his direct rival at AT&T, specifically just to gloat. That intense competitive spark set off a decades-long race for cellular dominance.
Moving on to part two, how cellular networks work, or the invisible web all around us. So, the magic phrase you really need to know here is frequency reuse. See, the big problem with older mobile systems was that a powerful, giant antenna could only offer a handful of channels. Once those channels were grabbed up, you were totally out of luck. No one else could make a call. The cellular network flips the script by dividing an area into small geographic cells, each with its own local tower. Because the transmission power is kept relatively low, the exact same radio frequencies can be reused in non-adjacent cells further away without any interference. It's a brilliant workaround that lets thousands of subscribers talk at the exact same time. So how does this actually play out in real life when you're, say, driving down the highway? Well, it's all about a seamless handoff. When you turn your phone on, automated systems embedded in your handset and the base station handle everything. First, your phone detects a cell tower. Next, that base station temporarily assigns you an available radio channel. But here is the really crazy part. As you travel, the network automatically passes your call from one cell tower to the next. The system just swaps your frequency channel on the fly, totally invisibly, without you ever noticing or dropping the connection. Which brings us to part three. Let's zoom back in on the anatomy of a phone, the actual hardware sitting in your hand. We've got a pretty stark contrast these days between the two main types of mobile devices. On one hand, you have smartphones, basically pocket supercomputers with full operating systems and massive app ecosystems that have mostly taken over developed nations. But on the other hand, don't count out the feature phone. These prioritize basic voice calling, SMS messaging, and use proprietary user interfaces. They still make up roughly 50% of all mobile usage in many developing regions because they're incredibly affordable and reliable. But whether you're rocking a top-tier smartphone or a basic feature phone, they all share the same basic anatomical traits. You've got highly efficient CPUs, optimized so they don't drain your battery. Speaking of which, they run on lithium-ion batteries engineered to manage power decay, usually surviving somewhere between 500 and 2,500 charge cycles before they start degrading. You've got your LCD or OLED displays, your speakers, and of course, the SIM card. First manufactured in 1991, that tiny little microchip is absolutely crucial. It securely stores your subscriber identity key, authenticating exactly who you are to the network. All right, part four. Let's talk about the software revolution, the digital brain behind the glass. When you look at the global smartphone operating system market today, it is effectively a massive duopoly. Google's Android is the heavyweight champion, dominating worldwide usage with nearly 72% of the market.
And right alongside it is Apple's iOS ecosystem, sitting at roughly 28%. While feature phones run on basic software, the smartphone software space has heavily consolidated around just these two giants.
But hey, an operating system is really just the foundation, right? The true revolution was the application economy. Think about it. We went from the very first basic SMS text message sent from a computer to a phone in the UK back in '92, to downloading simple ringtones in the late '90s, to a total paradigm shift in July 2008. That's when manufacturer-hosted app stores, really kicked off by Apple, turned the phone from a basic communication tool into an infinite platform. Suddenly, third-party developers had a centralized way to distribute video games, business tools, and media directly to millions of consumers.
And that leads us to our final section, Part 5, Global Impact and Realities, Living in a Connected World.
Economically speaking, making and selling these devices is a titan of global industry. It's a fiercely competitive arena where technical innovation dictates dominance. Looking at 2022 data, Samsung led the pack with 21% of the global market, closely trailed by Apple at 16% and Xiaomi at 13%. It's fascinating because historically, European giants like Nokia and Ericsson used to rule this space, but fierce competition has really shifted the center of hardware innovation over to Asian and American companies.
But let's look past the economics of selling the hardware for a second. The phone is a massive catalyst for societal change. The United Nations has actually pointed out that mobile phones have spread faster than any other technology in history, vastly improving livelihoods in developing nations. Take Kenya's M-Pesa system, for example. It lets users hold cash balances directly on their SIM cards, enabling branchless mobile banking for micro-enterprises. In rural parts of India and Africa, sharing a single device is incredibly common, connecting entire villages to essential services and news. And on a personal safety level, refurbished phones are routinely used to provide vital emergency lifelines for victims of domestic violence.
Now, we've got to be objective here. Manufacturing at this staggering scale creates some incredibly complex realities. Environmentally, the average user replaces their phone every 11 to 18 months. That relentless upgrade cycle contributes massively to global electronic waste. On top of that, sourcing the essential metals for these components has historically fueled conflict, particularly in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, raising serious ethical concerns about the supply chain. Plus, because these pocket supercomputers are so valuable, targeted theft became rampant, so much so that law enforcement had to push manufacturers to build in software kill switches just to render stolen devices totally unusable.
And then there's the behavioral impact on our own physical safety. Just take a look at this number, 30,000. Over an 8-year period, an estimated 30,000 walking injuries occurred in the U.S. purely because pedestrians were distracted by their cell phones.
But much more severely, distracted driving is a massive public safety hazard. In just one single year, the U.S. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration recorded 995 fatalities caused specifically by drivers distracted by their phones. This grim reality has sparked widespread legal responses, with many jurisdictions completely banning handheld phone use behind the wheel, recognizing that trying to use a complex pocket computer while driving drastically increases the risk of an accident.
From 2-kilogram analog bricks to the incredibly powerful digital supercomputers fitting right in the palms of our hands, the mobile phone has completely rewired human communication, commerce, and everyday behavior. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want you to literally look at the device in your hand. Knowing this rapid, wild journey from a simple voice call in 1973 to an invisible ecosystem of over 9.1 billion connections today, what do you think the next evolutionary leap of the mobile phone is going to look like? Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive. Keep learning and keep asking questions.